People think emotional manipulation is something loud, chaotic, dramatic. It isn't. Real emotional control is subtle, quiet, surgical. It slips under your awareness and rewires you from the inside out. You have no idea how easy it is for someone to control your emotions. And the scary part is, they don't even need your permission to do it. And the truth is harsh. Someone in your life has been doing it to you for a long time, and you never even noticed the moment you started bending to their emotional gravity. They don't argue. They shift. They don't confront. They withdraw. They don't need to shout to break you. All they need is a tiny change in tone, a delayed response, a disappointed sigh, a cold silence that hits you harder than any scream ever could. Your nervous system does the rest. You adjust, you adapt, you self-correct. Not because they asked you to, but because you're trained to. Tonight, you're going to see the tactics behind emotional control. The ones hidden in body language, tone shifts, reward patterns, and psychological modeling. Not the version you read in books, the one you've lived without realizing it. By the end of this, you won't be easy to control anymore. And that's the last thing the people in your life want. That's the dark psychology behind emotional control. The art of pulling your feelings like threads, tightening them when you resist, loosening them when you comply until you're reacting to their emotions instead of your own. You think you're emotionally independent? You're emotionally conditioned. Conditioned to avoid their anger. Conditioned to chase their approval. Conditioned to keep the peace or even when it destroys your own. And you're not here because you're naive. You're here because some part of you already knows. Someone has been shaping your reactions step by step, moment by moment, until you can't tell where their influence ends. And your feelings begin. The first tactic shows itself the moment you realize your emotions shift to match theirs. Not because you want to, but because your nervous system has been conditioned to respond to their emotional temperature. This is one of the purest forms of dark emotional control. They don't tell you how to feel. They set the atmosphere and let your mind do the rest. A manipulator never needs to raise their voice. All they do is switch the emotional climate. A sudden silence, a colder tone, a slow exhale that feels like disappointment, a look that pierces straight into your insecurity. And your body reacts instantly. Your shoulders tighten, your thoughts speed up, your chest gets heavier. You feel the urge to fix something, even though they never said anything was wrong. If you're the target, this tactic works because humans mirror emotional states automatically. It's wired into us. When someone close to you shifts their mood, your brain fires off old patterns. Did I cause this? Should I apologize? How do I make this stop? You bend without being asked. You soothe them so they don't have to soothe themselves. You stabilize their emotions while your own unravel quietly. But if you're the observer, the one who wants to understand how emotional control works, notice how powerful this technique truly is. You don't force behavior, you shape it. You become the emotional center everyone orbits. Whoever owns the emotional tone owns the room, and whoever owns the room owns the reactions of everyone in it. Think about the last time someone's mood changed and your entire body reacted. Think about how quickly you shifted into fixing mode. Think about how familiar that panic felt. Not adult panic, but the panic of a younger version of you who learned early that a slight change in tone meant danger. That's emotional conditioning. That's psychological imprinting. That's control. And the most disturbing part? Manipulators don't need to explain anything. They let you suffer in the silence they create. Because silence is where your mind punishes you more effectively than they ever could. The second tactic appears when someone starts making you feel responsible for emotions that don't belong to you. Not through guilt trips or dramatic outbursts. Those are amateur moves. Real emotional controllers work quietly. They make you feel like their disappointment is a failure on your part. Their stress is something you caused. Their silence is something you should fix. It's subtle. They sigh a little heavier when you disagree. Their voice softens when they want you to feel like you overreacted. They withdraw just enough to make you wonder what you did wrong. And before you notice it happening, you're managing their inner world instead of your own. If you're the one being controlled, it feels natural at first, like you're just being considerate or supportive. But slowly the balance shifts. You start apologizing first. You adjust your tone to avoid upsetting them. You replay conversations in your head, trying to decode what you should have said. Your emotional energy becomes theirs to shape. But if you're studying the mechanics behind this, you'll notice something important. They never directly blame you. They don't need to. They guide you into blaming yourself. It's the cleanest manipulation there is. Because once you start carrying emotions that aren't yours, you're already under their influence. Think about the last situation where you felt guilty without a clear reason, where you apologized instinctively, where you tried to make someone feel better even though they created the tension. That moment wasn't confusion, it was control. The third tactic emerges when someone slowly conditions you to treat their emotional state as more important than your own. They don't demand it. They let you arrive there on your own. At first, it feels like empathy. You're just being attentive, understanding, supportive. But over time, you start noticing a shift. Your reactions shrink so theirs can be bigger. Your needs go quiet so theirs can dominate the moment. You start stepping aside emotionally, almost without thinking. It happens through tiny cues. They look upset and you immediately adjust. Their mood dips and yours follows. They become stressed, and suddenly you're the one who feels off balance. Your internal world starts to depend on theirs, as if your emotions need permission to exist. If you're the target, this conditioning feels strangely familiar, almost like an old instinct waking up. Many people were trained as children to stabilize the emotional environment around them, so when a manipulator replicates that dynamic, you slip right back into the pattern. If you're observing the psychology behind this, the tactic is simple. When someone makes their emotional state the compass for the entire interaction, they quietly become the center of power. And you, without noticing, begin to orbit them. The danger here is subtle. You stop asking what you feel. You start asking how they feel. And once your emotions depend on theirs, your decisions follow the same path. Look back at your life. How many times have you abandoned your own feelings to avoid upsetting someone else? How often have you stayed silent because their reaction mattered more than your truth? That's emotional control, executed in its softest and most effective form. The fourth tactic shows up when someone quietly makes you believe that your emotions, your memory, and your perception can't be trusted, but theirs always can. At this point, it's no longer influence, it's ownership. A skilled emotional controller doesn't argue with your reality, they simply plant doubt in it. A subtle frown, a slow head tilt, a soft, almost condescending, "Are you sure?" They don't push, they let you tip. And you tip, faster than you'd ever want to admit. If you're the target of this tactic, you never notice the shift when it happens. You start second-guessing your instincts. You apologize for things you never said. You explain reactions that were perfectly normal. You rewrite your own emotions so they fit the version of events they approve of. Here's the part you won't want to hear. This isn't a loss of control, it's a loss of self-trust, and manipulators know exactly what that means. If they can convince you that you're misreading situations, you'll rely on their interpretation. If they can make you doubt your feelings, you'll ask for their perspective. If they can make you distrust your memory, you'll accept their truth. And once you trust someone else's emotional compass more than your own, they don't need to control your behavior anymore. You'll adjust yourself automatically. If you're the observer, the one learning how emotional control truly works, notice the elegance of this method. You don't have to convince anybody. You just introduce doubt, a single crack in their certainty, and they'll reshape themselves to match the image you offer them. And here's the darkest part. A person who no longer trusts themselves becomes easy to lead. They crave clarity. They crave validation. They crave someone who can explain their feelings for them. And that's exactly what the manipulator pretends to provide. Think about the last time you said, "I'm probably overreacting. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm just too emotional." That wasn't self-awareness. That was you seeing yourself through their lens. That's not connection. That's not empathy. That's psychological architecture. And you're living inside a structure they designed. The final tactic appears when someone convinces you, slowly, subtly, that the way they feel should determine the way you behave. Not because they're right, not because they're wise, but because they've conditioned you to believe that their emotions are more important than your truth. They'll say things like, I just want peace. But what they mean is, stop reacting in ways I can't control. They'll say, I hate conflict. But what they mean is, don't challenge me. They'll say, I'm sensitive. But what they mean is, you're responsible for protecting my comfort, even if it destroys yours. If you're the target, you begin reshaping yourself to fit their emotional limits. You speak softer. You share less. You hide feelings that might upset them. You start living inside an emotional cage they build out of their own preferences. But if you're the observer, the one studying this, notice how brilliant this manipulation is. They don't attack your emotions. They elevate theirs. They frame their emotional boundaries as moral, mature, reasonable, and suddenly you become the one who needs to adjust. By the time you realize how much of yourself you've edited away, you barely recognize the person you were before them. Think about your life for a moment. How many times have you swallowed your truth because someone else's comfort felt more important? How many times have you played the calm one, the quiet one, the understanding one, not because it was your nature, but because someone conditioned you to be? That's not compromise, that's indoctrination. And when a manipulator reaches this level, they don't need to control your emotions anymore. You do it for them. Most people believe emotional control is loud, chaotic, obvious, but the real danger is the quiet version, the one that slips through your defenses and teaches you how to betray yourself politely. The dark psychology behind emotional control isn't about breaking you. It's about bending you, softly, gradually, so subtly that you mistake the manipulation for your own emotional evolution. And here's the truth you won't like. Someone has already tested these tactics on you. Someone has already learned which tone makes you fold. Someone has already seen which silence makes you panic. Someone has already discovered how to twist your perception just enough that you rewrite reality in their favor. But the moment you see the pattern, the moment you understand the architecture behind emotional control, you become unpredictable to them, unmanageable, unmoldable. Awareness is the one thing emotional manipulators can't survive. It breaks the illusion. It exposes the strings. It gives you back the autonomy they worked so hard to take. So remember this. Your emotions are not theirs to shape. Your perceptions are not theirs to rewrite. Your identity is not theirs to sculpt. Protect your mind. Withdraw your permission. Take back the emotional space they've been living in rent-free. And never again let anyone decide how you're supposed to feel.